Hey, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be our second video on the I Stand With Ukraine series. And in this video, we're going to work on getting him all glued together and ready for paint. And we're probably going to end up doing a little bit of work on the Humvee and do the same thing with it. So let's get started here. Okay, so we can set the rifles aside. And we can actually set the decals aside also. So as I've said before, these Master Box kits are amazing. So I'm going to start with his torso. Probably, okay, so we're going to want to do his legs separately. Okay, so normally I would just glue them all together and then paint them, but because we have to do the decal, and you have to do the decal up into here, that's going to be really hard to do if he's painted, or if he's glued together and painted. And you just saw me test it under the coat. That comes way down, kind of covers his butt a little bit, but leaves room where you can see. So you'll want that to be decaled, so you can't jam that in there and glue it in yet. So those will just be cleaned up. Let me grab these. Okay. There's that. I mean, you can see that there's very minimal flash on this thing. On these parts. This guy, geez, sorry. It's kind of mean. So anyway, so that's good enough. Oh, this thing fits together beautiful. I love these kits. Okay, so let that dry. There's that. A bit here on his leg. There we go. Okay. Okay, that's good. See, I mean, you can see how fast this is going and how easy these things clean up. They're just molded so nicely. Okay. So what I plan to do, and we'll talk about this again a little bit later, is I plan to paint him okay. I plan to paint him just all over, the green color, because you see where they call it out. So I hate this. I gotta be honest. That should all be federal standard. This should be federal standard colors. All these guys should be selling stuff under federal standard numbers. Just make it easy. Don't try to just sell stuff. Make it easy for the modelers to build stuff. So anyway, sorry about the rant, but that just drives me nuts. So they keep showing, so they're showing the call out on this as C, and then, you know, that's his skin tone, and then B, G, and H, you know, for the camouflage colors and that. But what I plan to do is I plan to do them, because he's got the armband on, so what I plan on doing is just everything, basically do him completely in that H color, and then we'll come back in and we can hit a lot of it with the decals, and then we won't have to, you can just paint it real easy. So that's my plan. And then all this, because basically all this stuff, you know, the vest, the plate holder, all your gear that goes with it should all be the same color. I mean, it never is. That's just the nature of, equipment, but it should all be pretty close to the same color. So that'll be nice. It'll give us a little bit of a, reason to do a little bit of variations in the paint. We can show that, talk about that, and so yeah, I don't know if you can see it or not, but right there on his arm, he's got a little yellow armband. Oh, that's cool. They did that right along the seam of his uniform. So that really needs very, very little cleanup then. See, and that, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. These guys have, you know, thought that out a little bit, and it's just great. I just love it. These field jackets look really nice. I don't know on this. Having the hoodie out all the time though, I had to get full of water and mud and crap, and you'd be fighting with it all the time, but I don't know. I mean, it's probably better than the add-on ones. Of course, it might be like, God, I'm drawing a blank on what those ones were. But they used to have a zipper, and I had a hoodie, and it just tucked inside of that zipper container. So maybe they're doing the same thing as that. I don't remember which coat that was. Oh well. But as you can see, just cleaning all the parts up. I just did the local show here in Salt Lake last weekend, and a guy asked me, he says, you know, how do you build better models? And I was like, I don't know, just practice, you know. And he was like, okay. And he's like, you know, I really want to start upping my game with model building. And I said, well, that's super cool. I'm, you know, really glad to hear that. I always love to hear people say they're trying that. You know, and then I told him, I said, well, you know, it's the detail work. It's, you know, it's stuff like this. It's, you got to clean up all your mold lines and make sure all your spruce stuff's cut off and that. So anyway, sorry. So yeah, you know, this is it. I told him to focus on one thing at a time, and so, you know, I could kind of talk about that a little bit. You know, if all you did was stopped and just focused on this, just, you know, it's like building a house. You got to have a good foundation to get square walls and a roof that doesn't leak. That's what it is. It's, you know, it's just the setup. So first thing I would recommend is this right here. And a little bit of this right here is actually tools. I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to turn this into a sales pitch, but good tools. Like, these are our sanding sticks. I love these. They work great for doing this stuff. So in my case, I found that that's helped me do a little bit better, figuring out what grit you like, how you like to do them. Had a conversation with another guy at the model show about what's the best grit to work with. He says 400. I'm much more of a 320 guy myself, you know, so it's whatever works for either one of you. I mean, not that those two grits aren't really realistically they're pretty interchangeable. So I mean, it's not like it was an argument or nothing. It's just, you know, everybody has a tiny bit different preference for what they use, and there is nothing wrong with that. You like 400, I like 320. Somebody else might tell you that's a little heavy cut for them. They want to do them more with, you know, like a 600. I'm sure there's some guys that are like, oh, I do them, you know, like 80 to start with, and I get everything all shaped out. And so, you know, it's just whatever you want, and that's It's the fun of modeling. Everybody acts like you have to, I don't know. I shouldn't say everybody. That's not right. Just it seems like there's so many guys that act like you have to agree with them or there's a problem. And I've never been that way about stuff. And I know everybody does things differently. That's cool. How we're all building models, ain't that good enough? Okay. These guys are pretty decked out for equipment. I'm impressed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a little display base, and it's going to be the Humvee, and like going to be like on a dirt road, and there's going to be like a little stream that they're going to be up against, and he's going to be just standing there like they, you know, like they're guarding that road. So that's my plan for the diorama. It should be easy enough to build. Plus I have a couple of woodland scenic kits that have different things, and they're set up just to do specific items. One of them's water, another one's, you know, dirt road. So you see where I'm going with this. But anyway, to get back on what I was talking about earlier about building better models, it's kind of finding your own groove, I think. You know, what do you like to do, and what do you want to spend your time on. If you want to do, you know, scratch built dioramas, stuff like that, then, you know, you're going to get to know foam cutting and painting and weathering and that kind of stuff. You're going to get into that a lot. If that's not your thing, you want to do more of the, you know, show cars, then you're going to have to learn automotive paint and, you know, candies and customs or whatever, however you want to do it. You know, you need to figure out what you want to do and how far you want to go into it. I mean, I know guys that, you know, they'll mix their own paint so they can have exactly the shade they want, and they'll be very, very specific about everything that they do, and they build these models that are just works of art. I mean, just they blow you away. And then I know a few other people, and they're just like, you know, box stock's cool for me, and they build these box stock models, but, you know, everything's perfectly fitted, everything's perfectly painted, and they look a lot more detailed than they are. And it's kind of cool because it's like, oh wow, you first you're just like, oh, you know, that thing's got all the wiring, it's got all the, you know, all the detail stuff because they're so well done. And then when you start looking at them, you're like, oh no, wow, these are just, you know, they're just the way that AMT meant them to be, and this is cool, you know, or whoever model manufacturer is. And that's always good. I always like seeing that from people. So, you know, you gotta find what you like, kind of like everything. And then my suggestion on getting better at it, if you're a newer hobbyist, is again, you know, use the tools you have until you can start recognizing their weakness, and then you can move on to better tools. As an example, if you're using a super tiny little homemade disc sander that only has a table that's that big, but you're trying to do like 16 scale models, you're going to run into a size problem with that. You don't have to go out and spend, $4,000 on this big tabletop belt sander, disc sander combo thing. So just be a little cognizant of that. Yes, tools are important, and yes, you want to buy quality ones, but if you already have something you're using, and honestly, if it works for you, just use it. I don't know. I don't win any like best paint awards when I go to shows, but I don't do a lot of shows either. But I'm using, I think that's the cheapest or the second cheapest airbrush that Pache sells that I use. And it works fine for me. It works great for the way I paint. I like it. So for me, some sort of fancy artist $2,000 brush wouldn't make sense for me. I really would not have a use for that. So be careful with what you spend your money on. Spend your money wisely. But get the stuff that you think you need. Don't be very careful about, don't get caught up in the salesman's rhetoric about, this is the do-all, be-all, end-all item that you need to own to make your models win shows. That's really not the way it works. I don't know, take suggestions from your friends. Talk to your friends about the models they build. See the stuff that they do and start asking them questions. How did you do it? Why did you do it? That kind of thing. Modeling, like anything else, knowledge is power. If you know some extra techniques, and some product line that you really like, you've got that, you got that going for you. Had a guy at the show tell me that he didn't like my primer because he thought it was a little too thick for what he wanted to do. He likes to thin stuff out a lot. So we were talking about that, and not that he was bagging on me about the primer, because he was saying that he was reducing it out a little bit, but he just didn't like it out of the cup. But again, that guy the guy buys my primer because he knows how good it is, but he also knows that he has to throw a little bit of reducer in it. So you also have to kind of be aware that you're gonna be setting stuff up for you. Don't just take it at face value and, oh yeah, well that doesn't work. Mess with it a little bit, see if it does. But the one thing I will say that will always make your models look good is just solid building skills. Make sure stuff lines up without a big line in it. Make sure you have paints that look good, that aren't, they're not, I don't know how to explain, I said that without thinking it through. Make sure you have paints that are good. Like when I go to paint his face and his mask, there's a lot of little details in there that you want to keep. If you just glob some old crappy paint on there that wasn't really good, you would cover a lot of that and make it look bad, is what I mean. Oh, that just fell. I'll find that later. I'm not going to look for that. But that's what I mean by that. Make sure you got that. Make sure the stuff you use, make sure the stuff you work with works with you, I think would be a way of putting that. Because if you're fighting what you're working with, like I'm using these instead of these because they don't open quite as far and they're not quite as fine and they're plastic. So as you can see, that started to turn into a little bit of a fight with this. Actually, that's big enough to just grab. But you can just take these, they'll scoop right under, done and done. See, easy peasy. So that's what I mean. Like, I'm not fighting this tool to use it. It's good to go. So we're gonna leave that there. The rest of this stuff we're gonna set aside. Okay, so he's done basically. I still have a little bit of cleanup left on his side. But I don't know if you guys wanna, if you're really all that excited about being bored about that. Here, let me grab this. Sorry, my head's gonna be in frame for a second. Again, speaking of tools, I got these from Amazon, Topek. There's files. They have files and the little diamond embedded rasp. So for like right here where there's those bands and the plastic doesn't line up 100%, you still got that line. These are perfect for that kind of stuff. You can just come in. Okay, and then that looks good. I'm not real happy with the way that's turning out, but it's fine. Again, you know, but you know what I mean. Like I said, you know, practice, and I've used these on several things, so I know exactly how to go over that to make the best of that. Well, I'm not trying to claim that I'm some sort of like, you know, master at any of this. I do okay, but I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. He just asked me that. It's been on my mind. I wanted to kind of share some of that with you guys. To be honest with you, we had a guy who was a friend of one of our guys in UMAG, and he passed away, and he wanted to give all of his models, because all he did was car stuff, and he wanted to give all of his models to UMAG, to the club, so that we as members could take some of his stuff and have it to do stuff with. And so we were like, okay, that's cool. So then when the guy brought it in, the guy who had passed away was, nothing was cleaned up. It was just twisted off of the trees, and it was just glued together. There was no paint, there was nothing. But I tell you what, that guy had more models done than anybody I've ever seen. So it was like, you know, that was his fun in the hobby. He just put them together like one afternoon after another, you know, and it was kind of cool to see that much stuff get done by one person. But anyway, I have prattled on for a half hour now, and we are done with him. He's actually ready for a primer coat. So I'm going to stop right here. And I'm going to throw that in there, and I'm going to turn this off and dig out that helmet, and then we'll come back and we'll start throwing some paint on him, and that'll be our next episode. So thanks for watching, and as I always say, if you use code YouTube10, you can get discounts on all our paint products. We sell this glue, we sell these little spring clamps, we sell the sanding pads, both the tweezers I use, we sell those. So we sell all that. You get 10% off all that, as well as all of our paints and stuff. So go ahead and head over to scalefinishes.com and use that. It's YouTube10, and I will see you on the next video. Thanks again for watching.